celebration.
Well, good, because it's time. Ready? Call this meeting to order. Rise and pledge allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call.
Mrs. Moore, here. Mrs. Thompson. Here. Mr. Morris.
Here.
Mr. Bittner.
Here.
Mr. Shaboo.
Here.
Mr. Lunder.
Here.
Mr. Johnson.
Here. Approval of the minutes from the regular meeting of council from April 25th, 2023. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes?
I move we accept them as written.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Morris, seconded by Mrs. Thompson for acceptance. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Moore. Aye. Mrs. Thompson. Aye. Mr. Morris.
Aye.
Mr. Bittner.
Aye.
Mr. Shaboo.
Aye.
Mr. Lunder.
Aye.
Mr. Johnson.
Aye. Correspondence. Clerk, is there any correspondence this evening?
I have no correspondence.
Does any member of council have correspondence this evening? Hearing none, we will move on to administrative and department head reports. Mayor and Safety Director, Mr. Eva, good evening.
Mr. Johnson, members of council, the public here this evening. Today I swore in Lori Hughes. Lori is a new part-time communications officer for the police department. Tomorrow, Donald Taylor will join us as a part-time patrol officer. He'll begin his field training, actually on Thursday. Fire department report for April, there were 129 calls for service, 17 fire service calls, 112 rescue EMS calls. Of those 112 calls, 24 were calls for in-field assist. In the fire department, we had several members who celebrated a service anniversary in April. Battalion Chief Padawana, 31 years. Firefighter Anania, 18 years. Lieutenant Langford, 15 years. Firefighter Clems, 6 years. Firefighter Padley, 6 years. Firefighter Benlock, 3 years. Firefighter Kovacs, 3 years. And firefighter Sunball, 3 years. I did send out to all council members today an email I received from the Ohio Ethics Commission as far as filing a 2022 financial disclosure statement. That filing is due by Monday, May 15th. Late fees are $10 a day for each day the statement is late, and the maximum late fee is $250. Hopefully everybody gets that in. In the beginning of July, Police Chief John Dealing will begin his retirement. Lieutenant John Forsythe will take over as police chief. In August, we will give a civil service test to move up one of our 2 sergeants to lieutenant. One of our officers will then also be promoted to sergeant sometime in August. Who's our report tonight?
Okay, thank you, Administrative Director, Mr. Nuss, good evening.
So they finished paving concrete. All roads, they should come back and crack and seal those. And they finished the asphalt as well. Our service department's gonna fix some burn periods. I'm currently working on the tax budget, hoping to have that, actually have to have that part of you by next council meeting. And I am in the process of getting estimates for the curtain. Well, I've gotten 1 already, but 2 more have already been here this week, I'm guessing. And who's mine?
Law Director, Mr. Lyons, good evening.
Good evening, Mr. President. I have no report.
Questions to the administration? I have one. The website indicates that there's a planning and zoning commission meeting on May 22nd. Could you please address that?
I will have that changed. There is not.
Okay,
Okay, I got an email today on the 22nd.
22nd is the Board of Zoning Appeals. Is that a Monday?
Is that Board of Zoning Appeals? The 15th. Because even Tuesday, Kason acknowledged that she'd be there.
Okay, yes. It's all coming back to me. Yes, there is a special meeting on the 20th. Yes.
Can
I
you
am so.
elaborate on that a bit, what the special meeting's about? I mean, council had business before the Planning and Zoning Commission and they didn't meet at their regular meeting, so I'd like to know what the special meeting is about. That's more important than council's business. That was before though.
We will go over the hard part. And today is the 9th. I'm waiting on, information from Greg Summers for that. So it will be the development at Andrews Station.
Okay, then why did this need to be a special meeting rather than 2 weeks later to the regular meeting?
I think because we skipped May. I told him that we can do special meeting there. That's the only reason I can.
Any other questions for council? Okay. Board committee commission reports, Parks and Recreation.
I was not able to attend. I was on vacation.
That's correct. Ordinance committee,
Ordinance committee met Tuesday, May 2nd, in attendance with myself, Mr. Morris, Mr. Shaboo, Mr. Johnson, some more members of the public. Started at 7 p.m. Went over a few ordinances, 3 of which are we moved back to council, so we'll either going to be done for tonight. And then also went over some suggestions by administration, which we have further decided we're gonna move those to P and C to take further look at those.
okay,
Adjourned at 7:33.
have you referred those to planning and zoning? I would send them to them directly, to the chair. Were there any other board committees or commissions that met that weren't listed here tonight? Hearing none, we'll move on to open to the public to speak. This is your opportunity to speak to council. Please come to the lectern, state your name and address for the record. Again, it's not a back and forth with council, just an opportunity to speak to council. Hearing none, we'll close this portion of the open to the public to speak. Legislation before council, resolution number 2023-R-12. Please read it by its title.
Resolution number 2023-R-12. A resolution authorizing the administrative director to perform all actions necessary to accept class action lawsuit payment of $17,414.03.
Does the law director want to speak to this at all?
We were notifying way of a class action notice. I believe it was back in 2022, there was a class action that had been filed against Monsanto. And we were a member of that class. We had the right to opt out. We did not opt out. Approximately 30 days ago or so, we received notice that we were receiving, and I believe we have received $17,414 part of that class action lawsuit. So it appears that I can't speak for the other cities in Ohio, but Ness investment. The other cities in Lake County have also received a similar amount. So while we were not especially damaged by this, we were included in the class being eligible for a payment. So we can use this for any purpose that we deem necessary. We can use it for matters relating to PCBs, but we don't have a particular PCB problem at this time, as I understand it. And that's what I know, and other communities have gotten it. I think Mr. Ness may have some additional information.
Every city in Ohio received this check, except the townships. Some got a little bit more, but for the most part, we all got the same exact one. So we looked into PCBs, and there was a monitoring involved back, it had nothing to do with PCBs, actually with our gas tax. So I think it's because we're on the waterway, that's most of the city it is, so that's why.
I know up in New York, so in New York, the cleanup of, I think it was the Hudson River, You know, it wasn't with GE, there was a lot of PCBs that were in water. And so I think Mr. Messer is correct, that this had something to do with the water that was there. Affect Lake County and other areas. of the state.
Okay, I have a question for the law director. Should this resolution state in there something regarding what the class action settlement is about? Because for historical purposes, because, I mean, it just says settlement agreement of a class action lawsuit, doesn't tell us what the class action lawsuit was about.
I think for historical purposes, that would be a good idea. And I can bring it back for the next meeting and provide more context. Okay,
I think that would be good just for historical purposes,
and I agree, I think that,
because it's very vague as it is.
and I can also put in there, in terms of the settlement notice, I know I did it in an email notifying the administration. That we're not restricted in what our purpose is. That's a good idea.
Is there any objection from council to put it on second reading?
I think it's a good idea.
Well, I do have one question though.
Sure.
Since we have already received these funds, is there any time limit on when we have to approve this? So if we go to second reading, is that gonna be okay?
I think that we are approving it for historical purposes to document that we have received it and accepted it, so we're all getting.
Oh, okay.
We haven't cashed it yet.
Okay.
But they asked if we cash it ASAP, I can show you the letter, but I think you get it in 9 days, 120 days, to get it checked, so.
Just as long as it doesn't.
Anybody else? Any other questions? Okay, this will go on to second reading. Pending an amendment. Resolution number 2023-R-13, if you please read it by its title.
Resolution number 2023-R-13, a resolution confirming the appointment of Brett Moore to the Civil Service Commission.
Motion to suspend the rules. I'll second it.
Motion to suspend by Mr. Morris, seconded by Mr. Shaboo. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Moore? Aye. Mrs. Thompson?
Aye.
Mr. Morris?
Aye.
Mr. Bittner,
Aye.
Mr. Shaboo?
Aye.
Mr. Lunder?
Aye.
Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
Motion for passage.
Seconded.
Motion made by Mrs. Thompson, seconded by Mr. Morris for passage. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Moore? Abstain. Mrs. Thompson?
Aye.
Mr. Morris?
Aye.
Mr. Bittner,
Aye.
Mr. Shaboo?
Aye.
Mr. Lunder?
Aye.
Mr. Johnson?
Aye. It is passed. Ordinance number 2022-0-25, third reading, it's assigned to the Planning and Zoning Commission and it's still there. So we will skip over that for right now. Ordinance number 2023-0-06, if you please read it by its title.
Ordinance number 2023-0-06, third reading assigned to ordinance committee. An ordinance amending chapter 1462, rental inspections of the codified ordinances.
And this has been submitted back to council from the ordinance committee, correct?
That is correct.
Are there any amendments made to this? To the original legislation?
The original, there were no amendments from the original. Correct.
That's correct.
We did not change anything.
Okay,
Maybe. I like. The bulk order was removed. And we put the correct, who we were using, which is international.
Property.
Yeah, so that was changed up.
That was it. We didn't change the fees.
Fees, everything else stayed the same, that we agreed upon.
Joyce, do you have? Has council received the updated version of this? Is that what's been distributed?
Of 06, I believe we did.
yes.
Yes,
Did you mark it in a special way?
not yet. I was waiting till this meeting.
Okay. How did you distribute that as part of this package that went out to everybody so they saw the way it reads now?
It was sent to all members of council and to the administration
This past Thursday as
this
part of
past
the
Thursday.
agenda
Mhm.
meeting. correct?
Yes,
So there may have been some non-substantive changes that are reflected in that. So I would say that any motion to amend is to amend per the changes that were submitted last Thursday through the agenda meeting.
Okay, so is there a motion to amend as presented? You guys made amendments. It's different from the very first version that we received, therefore you guys must amend it.
Make the motion to amend.
I'll second it.
Motion made by Mr. Bittner, second by Mr. Morris to amend as received.
We did too. Okay.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Moore? Aye. Mrs. Thompson?
Aye.
Mr. Morris?
Aye.
Mr. Bittner,
Aye.
Mr. Shaboo?
Aye.
Mr. Lunder?
Aye.
Mr. Johnson?
Aye. Because I'm not comfortable with everybody's reactions to this, we're gonna leave it on third reading for one more meeting. Make sure you've read what's been changed from the original draft, because some people don't seem to know they actually amended stuff. So we're gonna leave it on third reading.
Mr. President,
Yes,
I'm pretty sure that the bulk of it that was changed was from Boca International Property Maintenance to International Property Maintenance. I think that was the only change that was made.
you think?
I'd almost.
We're gonna leave it on third reading until,
That's fine.
give everyone a chance to make sure they've read it thoroughly, since we've only received it on Thursday.
Okay.
Question.
So I have some more recommendations for changes to the ordinance and clarification.
Okay, well, then we're gonna send it back to the ordinance committee. Congratulations, you guys have received it again. And he will share with you those recommendations. We'll do this another 6 or 7 times. All right. Ordinance number 2023-0-07, if you could please read it by its title.
Ordinance number 2023-0-07. Third reading assigned to ordinance committee. An ordinance creating new ordinance 1022.12, local tree lawn regulation not involving utilities and or telecommunication devices.
Okay, this was also returned from the ordinance committee,
Yes, there were changes.
and there are amendments to that.
Correct. So I recommend that we amend from the first.
Make the motion.
The motion.
I'll second that
So
motion.
you're making a motion to amend as presented, is that correct? All right, by Mr. Bittner, seconded by Mr. Morris. Roll call, please.
Mhm.
Mrs. Moore?
Correct. And we changed it.
No. Mrs. Thompson?
Aye.
Mr. Morris?
Aye.
Mr. Bittner,
Aye.
Mr. Shaboo?
Aye.
Mr. Lunder?
No.
Mr. Johnson?
No. It's been amended. Are there additional amendments that want to be made?
Yeah.
Mr. Shaboo?
I brought up at the meeting and I've been thinking about it over the weekend, that clear zone 18 inches, especially for a non-curb breed. In my opinion, it should be 24 inches for especially large top there. And so I'm proposing that we amend it from 18 to 24 inches.
Is there a second to the amendment?
Do we have some discussion?
After it's been seconded, otherwise it's dead.
I'll second it.
Seconded by Mr. Lunder. Now there's a discussion on the amendment.
Sir, the 18 inches is actually part of a state standard. That's where the 18 inches came from. We just didn't pull it out of the air.
Correct, but we can override that.
Yeah,
18
why would
if we wish,
Why would we?
because I think 18 inches is too precarious to have some of those big stones there. My opinion.
Okay, the motion's been made, the motion's been seconded. Is there any other discussion on the motion? Roll call on the motion, please.
Mrs. Moore? No. Mrs. Thompson,
No.
Mr. Morris,
No.
Mr. Bittner,
No.
Mr. Shaboo,
Aye.
Mr. Lunder,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye. Are there other amendments?
I would like to see something in here addressing the trees in a lot of our curbed and sidewalk areas. Marine Parkway, Cedarwood, all those developments, people have trees in their tree line, decorative trees or trees that have been there for whatever. With this ordinance, if something happens to that tree, they're not allowed to replace that tree. I think that if you want to put a tree back to replace your tree that fell down or died because the salt killed it or whatever, you should have the option to put the tree back. And we're gonna end up with a city without any trees if we keep telling people you can take them down, but you can't put them back.
So are you proposing a amendment to allow trees on the tree lawns of curb streets? Is that what you're amending?
Yes.
Is there a second to that?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Mr. Lunder. Any discussion on that?
I would
I'm sorry, go ahead.
also like to add that if it's one tree, one replaces it, so the exact quantity that's removed or damaged or destroyed in any manner, that's replaced with the same value, not. So if you have the one, you can't plant two more.
See, I'll disagree with that because if you have currently, you just moved into a house that has a curb street tree line, doesn't have a tree there because somebody had taken it down years ago or it just never had one. Why should you not be allowed to have a tree on that tree line?
Well, right, but I'm just saying, instead of, what if someone hits mine that's in front of my house? So I can go put two more out there if one gets hit or damaged, that's my.
It's your tree line. If you have zero, why didn't you be able to put one in? Further discussion?
So my thought in this whole thing was walking around and looking at these areas you're even talking about. I don't know how many of you walk these sidewalks, they are destroyed because of these trees. Or walk in an area where there are overhead, you can't take Marine Parkway because there's not, there are overhead wires. What's the first thing that the electrical company does when they go down there? Makes it look like crap. I think you can plant trees, just not in this area that we're talking.
Yeah, I'll counteract that. Living in the area that does have trees and sidewalks, we don't have overhead power lines. Our sidewalks aren't necessarily destroyed. It depends on the type of tree that was planted there. My sidewalk actually looks just fine and has trees on the tree lawn. And has had trees in the tree lawn since long before my time there. And yes, there are certain types of trees that don't belong on the tree lawn and can destroy the sidewalk, but that's your responsibility. Just like I am responsible to maintain my sidewalk. If my tree destroys that sidewalk, that is on me. We shouldn't be outlawing it simply because it could do something. Now, back in the day, there was a tree board that actually maintained a list of trees. I think it'd be worthwhile for us to research what kinds of trees would be appropriate and have a tree list available to residents.
I would agree to
But I don't think we should be saying, no, you may not have trees on your tree lawn. I think it's inappropriate. I think you go down these streets and you see trees on, it looks pretty. You go down Driftwood, I really like seeing those trees on those tree lawns. It looks nice. And then I drive down Marine Parkway and I see where people have taken down a lot of the trees. And it looks, I don't know, pretty desolate, to be honest. And it looked a lot prettier years ago. So the motion's been made, the motion's been seconded to amend it to allow that. Any other discussion?
Do we want to send this back to have ordinance look at adding a section in there with the allowable trees? To do that research and put that in there?
Well, first, we're gonna see if the amendment passes.
Okay.
before we do anything beyond
Exactly
that.
what was the amendment again? It's like.
So the amendment is to allow trees in the tree lawn of curb streets.
Does that mean that non-curb streets can't have trees in the tree lawn?
They don't technically really have a tree lawn.
Okay, between the area of the curb and the sidewalk.
Okay.
Is that what on the 18 clearance?
I don't think we should discriminate against curb versus curb.
No, I don't either, but they don't really have a tree lawn per se, so. Okay, roll call on the amendment.
Mrs. Moore,
Yes.
Mrs. Thompson.
Aye.
Mr. Morris,
Aye.
Mr. Bittner,
No.
Mr. Shaboo,
Aye.
Mr. Lunder,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson.
Aye. Are there any other amendments?
I just have a question for clarification.
Sure.
So some residents have filled in their ditches.
Yep.
And then put gravel. So does that mean the 18 inches applies where they can't park? In that 18 inches, they can't park their cars overnight?
Does it need vision, water flow?
Plowing, that sort of, yeah.
Does it? Then the answer is yes, it can. That's how we decided.
Yeah. Thank you.
Any other amendments? All right, then I'm gonna refer this to myself to word the verbiage into that for curb streets, and we'll bring it back to the council at the next meeting. I'll save the ordinance committee from having to wrestle with that. They have enough to deal with.
We were to send it to the tree committee anyway.
Okay, ordinance number 2023-0-09, if you could please read it by its title.
Ordinance number 2023-0-09. An ordinance amending codified ordinance 452.16, parking of trucks and other large vehicles.
What explanation on this one?
Discussion, is there anything that anybody wants to do with this?
So just in case you haven't looked it over or read it, this was pretty much just adding the verbiage of consent to be able to park a such vehicle on property, private, public.
Question?
There's just one typo in it.
Yeah, it's just that.
It's just a K.
Yeah. and parking.
It's a clear glare.
Could be period of trouble.
It could be paired. It could be front and back.
Any discussion on it?
I question how this works with trucks that park in like over here in where Marks and all those are, because there are several different property owners. So does that mean that they would have to have permission from a business owner or the actual property owner? And as a property owner, if you don't want trucks parking there, don't you have to post signage saying that like no parking of trucks over a certain weight limit and something like that? I could see this being very difficult for our police department to enforce, because do they have to have every phone number to every property owner? And then if somebody's like, oh, hey, there's a semi truck parked over here overnight, do they have to go call that landlord and be like, hey, did you get permission? Or how
I think that's.
are
called
they
out
proving
in C&D.
permission?
Yeah, it's called out in C&D that it has to have consent of the owner of such.
So this
property.
is more of a complaint driven
How are they gonna?
ordinance. So like to answer your question, are police just gonna sit there and knock on all the doors of the semis that are parked there? Absolutely not. What this is going to be is the owner of that property saying, hey, I did not give anybody permission to park here. This truck is here. That's it. I mean, that's pretty clear and dry. It's their property. They said they're not supposed to be parked there. The city camper parks here overnight. Did we give them permission to do it? And we did, maybe we didn't. If we didn't, we have now the means to say, you cannot do that.
No, and I will tell you, if you see a cab or a camper, they do have permission. We have, somebody gets a hold of the chief or dispatch to say, well, by the way, do you mind if I keep my cab here? Because I'm on the road and, I don't have the, any means or anywhere to put it. So they do get permission from us to leave something here. Now, I think that this is more important is we're going to dictate what happens on private property, which is a little dicey.
I think, and I don't know if it would be done in this ordinance or if it would be done somewhere else, that if somebody has private property and they don't want overweight vehicles parked on that property, they would properly have to post it and then they could have it towed or whatever, like, I don't know how many times I've gone places where there's postings of, if you're over this weight limit, they'll have your car towed, or this is private property, and if you're not authorized, your car is gonna be towed. If they don't want the trucks parking there, put up a sign that says you can't park your truck here, and if they're there, they can call the tow company and have it towed.
Mr. Johnson, this was complaint driven, because of Mark's, Marco, or, Mario, not Mario's, Marcos. The parking lot got tore up by heavy trucks up there. And it goes on every year where they have to go replace some of the asphalt. And we've been fighting with over there for what, I don't know if it's even done yet. It's still not done yet. And Manor's got a ordinance, and this is where this one came from, is that we'll send a letter out to the property owners of the shopping centers and telling them that this is the ordinance, and the ordinances should say that the owner has to post signs of no parking of any semis or anything like that overnight. And that's how this was started. And I believe that's probably what should happen, is that the letter should go to the owner. He has to post the signs up there with the ordinance number and go ahead. And now the police have official ordinance that they can go and police.
And I think their signage has to state something too, that if you park here and it gets towed, it's at the owner's expense, it's not at the city's expense.
Exactly.
I mean, we have to let property owners police their own properties. That'd be the same thing as somebody parking in your driveway and you saying, they give you permission to park here. I think we need to put it back on them.
Can I weigh in here? This isn't really designed to tow these vehicles.
Okay.
They can, those signs that you're talking about. And I've never actually seen one. Semi-tractor. And normally it's just a car parking in a parking lot, and you're telling people this is not a public parking lot, and remaining here subject to be towed. This instead is the owner of property calling city police and saying there's a truck that's parked on my property, and can you come out and take a look and give it a ticket? They can then give it a ticket and $100, and then fine for violation, and that's designed to discourage them from doing it. If the owner wants to have, we're not going to tow it. If the owner wants it towed, then he would have to put those signs up. And I don't know how many companies actually are capable of towing semis. One or two in Lake County. So it was really more of just a parking violation situation. And in terms of just a question of multiple businesses in different areas up there, normally the way that those leases work is that the owner, whoever the owner of that plaza is, have to be the one who's complaining person. They could get the call from one of the businesses saying, hey, they're doing that. But it would be the owner that has permission to give, permission or to say that you're not allowed to do that. And, because those are considered common areas, almost all shopping areas, plaza. It's possible that one of the leaseholders could have that in his lease that they could call and that they have a designated area, but they would just have to show that. They were made.
Any other discussion? Any motions? Hearing none, this will go on the second reading. Old business, is there any old business tonight? New business, we have an expenditure approval. The new LED sign. You all should have received that memo. Any discussion?
Mr. President,
Yes.
Mr. Ness, is there nothing else we need that, we can spend that grant money on?
Well, the grant money specifically for upgrades, energy efficiency, that sort of thing, so, yeah, there's tons of things to spend it on, but not in no back grant funds.
They wouldn't meet the NOPEC requirements, is that what you're saying?
Correct. Yeah, it has to be, so we could do like LED light, that's why we can use it for the police locker room,
Okay,
so the sign up there would fit into that. If you're into solar panels or something like that, or electrical changes, and energy efficiency, that would qualify.
and if I read the letter correctly, the majority of this is coming from the NOPEC grant with little money coming out of city general funds, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Those are all funds that are gonna expire. So I already talked to CT, we don't know if, they said it would be close, if we would have an invoice for the locker room before that date. So rather than take the chance, I would rather spend it than lose it.
Are there any plans for the old sign that's out there?
No, if we wanna keep it, or what do you want to keep it?
Well, maybe repurpose it somewhere else.
Well, that's an option, yeah.
Oh, the council bought that sign as a group purchase. So I'd like to see it repurposed for something.
Okay, yeah.
What do you folks think?
Or maybe food for thought too is, you know, the AMVets are looking for a sign, maybe a donation of that sign to them, just a thought.
That'd be
Yeah.
fine.
They've been here for a while and they've done a lot, so just a thought.
Mr. President,
Yes.
make a motion that we go ahead with the expenditure.
Motion made by Mr. Morris,
Second,
seconded by Mrs. Thompson for approval of the expenditure. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Moore? Aye. Mrs. Thompson?
aye.
Mr. Morris?
Aye.
Mr. Bittner,
Aye.
Mr. Shaboo?
Aye.
Mr. Lunder?
Aye.
Mr. Johnson?
Aye. Is there any other new business tonight?
Do we need a motion to donate the old signs to the AMPS or see if they need it? Or is that just something the administration can handle?
I mean, if you want, I can reach out to,
Why don't you reach out first and see if they could use it? Obviously, we're not gonna get rid of the old sign until we have the new sign to be put in, so. I don't think there's a rush to make a motion at this point, but
Okay.
I will reach out.
Lead time like 8 to 12 weeks. I believe that.
any other new business? Hearing none, we will move on to open to the public to speak. Again, it's your opportunity to speak to council. Come to the lectern, state your name and address for the record.
I think getting a new sign is great, especially since it's getting, my name is Earl Currisfield. 7523 Salida Road. I think getting a new sign is fantastic, especially since we get it paid for it and it's all good stuff. Thank you very much for what you guys are doing. Question to ask, is there any type of design criteria, anything that, or who's gonna design the sign? Does it have certain sizes, dimensions? Is it shape? Is it just a square sign? I mean, I'm just not sure what we're getting and how that would fit in with the vision of the city. And just throwing that thought out, that would be really nice if, as we keep moving forward, doing great things for the city, that we continue to look at how we can make the city better and better. So that's my own statement.
Thank you. Anybody else? Hearing none, we will close this portion and open to the public to speak. We'll now move on to announcements and settings of meetings.
Planning and zoning, May 22nd, 6 P M.
Planning and zoning, May 22nd, 6 P M.
BZA,
BZA,
May the 15th
May 15th,
at 7 P M.
7 P M.
It's just about anything. I don't.
Tuesday the 16th.
Tuesday, the 6th, Tuesdays are bad days. Just the last night.
Thursday, the 18th. Okay.
So to get Tuesday for this meet where we're pushing for the fall.
You tell me.
Yes, it'll be there for the next time.
I'm not as busy as you two.
Either of mine, just said one night.
You just said Tuesday,
You just said Tuesday, yeah.
and it would be the 25th. For Thursday.
25th is Parks and Recreation
What time
at
is that?
7, so. Give me 6.
You wanna do it at 6 or no?
About the 24th.
That's a Wednesday.
Got a feeling Ron's got it up already.
24th.
24th is available.
Yep.
24th at what time?
7 P M.
So ordinance, 24th, 7 P M.
Oh, that's my wife's birthday. Sorry.
But not on Tuesday.
That Tuesday. Sorry.
How about this?
Due to conflict of interest, we're gonna go May 16th at 7 P M. I know it's a Tuesday, you can't make it. I think we should just keep going because I'm out for the rest.
Okay, well, I'll put down May 16. I'll
Yeah,
try
I
to
mean,
do
we got it. We got it.
May 16th at 7 P M.
I will keep you know,
I understand your schedule.
yes, yeah.
Next
I
regular,
don't, but I understand.
next regular agenda meeting is Thursday, May 18th at 6 P M. Next regular meeting of councils, May 23rd at 7 P M. Are there any other meetings? Hearing none.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion made by Mrs. Thompson, seconded by Mr. Morris for adjournment. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Moore? Aye. Mrs. Thompson?
Aye.
Mr. Morris?
Aye.
Mr. Bittner,
Aye.
Mr. Shaboo?
Aye.
Mr. Lunder?
Aye.
Mr. Johnson?
Aye. This meeting is adjourned.